the different classes that we have, not really classes necessarily, not always, but some information we want to keep you guys up to speed with. And appraisals is definitely one of those that we are seeing trending quite differently. And as it's always been in real estate, you can have 10 different appraisals and you'll get 10 different appraisal reports. So it's really good, I feel, to interview appraisers just to see where we're going every few months, just to kind of get a sense of how they do things, how they evaluate, better for us to understand what they're evaluating, how they're evaluating those things, different types of adjustments. Of course, we do CMAs. CMAs are never, ever appraisals. We have to make sure that we make that distinction to our clients and let them know that what to be prepared for in appraisal, whether it's a buyer or seller. So today we have Steve Crellin with Yawkey Way Appraisal Services with us today, who's going to go over the appraisal process, what the appraisal report would look like, how he makes those adjustments, where we're seeing some of the market trends go right now, which is kind of crazy. Good luck if anybody can kind of figure that out. And so Stephen, with that, thanks so much for joining us today, and take it away.
No problem. Hey, how are you? It's good to see you guys again. And thanks for letting me come in and harass you for this lunch and learn. I'm pretty pumped. The appraisal world is really an interesting one right now. So we get a lot of interesting feedback. So I've been doing this a bunch over the summer, and I figured what I would do is sort of just run down your basics of what is happening, how what we do is impacting what you guys do today, because we're being villainized like we're the bad guys. And it's literally just because of some major miscommunications between what is happening and all that other stuff. So thank you for the introduction, Melinda. She said, my name is Steve Crellin. I work in Phoenix, but I've been doing appraisals in Flagstaff and Phoenix and Montana and Utah and Nebraska, 9 different states since 2004. I got into this profession right after getting out of the military, because if you did a quick Google search, real estate was booming, and I really got into doing this. So I've been doing it since then. And I have a stupid amount of fun doing it. And what I have become is sort of a niche, I guess you could say, appraiser, because I have started doing what my dad says is the crap that no one else wants. And I love it. I do mostly high dollar, crazy complex. And I just have a blast doing these types of weirdo appraisals. A lot of celebrity stuff I've been doing over the summer. Marky Mark's house I did. So, by the way, he has a really terrible taste. I was kind of bummed out by seeing Marky Mark's house. I'm like, oh, wow, that's what 23 million gets you. Kind of shocking. But so all jokes aside, thanks for letting me come in and talk about this sort of crazy world. So I've been doing a bunch of these things this summer. I love working with agents. And if any of you follow my Instagram page, all I do is sort of answer questions that I get all the time in a stupid sort of way. I cram movie quotes and movie clips and TV and all this other stuff. And it's sort of my niche because I am obsessed with movies. It's like my favorite thing in the world. So my Instagram's kind of disjointed and funny, but in each post is something that someone has brought up to me or something that's happened in the field that I feel like everyone needs to be sort of quote unquote educated on without sounding rude. There's just so many miscommunications. And you know, you said something at the very beginning of this introduction, which is today, appraisers, you'll get one appraisal here and you'll get one appraisal here. Appraisers have not been further apart today on what is acceptable, what is common than ever before. And that's what happens when you get 30% increases in a year and 40 offers. And it's a crazy world because no one really knows where to place things. I have worked with a lender, a very big lender, for 15 years. So I know what the lenders do. And I kind of figure that I'm pretty good at what I do because I really know what the lenders want. So when it comes to this, the first question everybody asks is, this is a personal pet peeve of mine, and take no offense, agents, but the world of price per square foot is the thing that is being thrown around all the time now, and it could not be more misleading to everybody involved. So I'm going to share with you an appraisal that I did recently. The address has mostly been blocked out, but you can take a look and see, and I'm going to show you why that is what it is. So I'll get to that in a second. Appraisers, by definition, we take every little thing in the house, from the lot to the location, to the views, to the type of carpet and appliances and flooring and pool and garage and bathroom features and all of this stuff, not even remotely including the condition, the remodeling, all of those things we take into consideration. And the way I always word it to people is agents always throw the term, oh, well, it's 300 per square foot, it's 145 per square foot, you should have no problem coming in at that today. And that is really hard to understand when you don't know appraisal, because it could not be further from what appraisers do. Like, it's comical how different it is. And I have always sort of had a hard time understanding why there's the big separation. It's easier for agents to tell someone, okay, how much do you have? How much do you want to spend per square foot? But when it comes to a seller, or if you're going to refinance or anything else, the owner of the home, the last thing that they want is all of their things lumped together in one price per square foot, which is why I always thought it was so weird that that term hasn't gone away. It's in my opinion, in most, actually it's every appraiser, it's completely useless, and it actually gets people into trouble. Because say you have your house, you just bought this new house and you put new countertops and new sinks in there, and then you're going to sell it, right? You're not okay with someone coming in and saying, oh, your house is 1,200 square feet. Yeah, you're this. No, you want your value for each one of those little things that you did, right? I mean, it's just common sense. That's how it works. So I always was confused by the lumping it in up front. I know why you do it, because you guys are marketing to people and people need an easy number to grasp. But when an appraiser comes in and the buyer and the seller and the agent are all starting, well, no, I mean, it's 200 a square foot. I don't understand what the problem is. We have to then, like, okay, everybody, let's just take a step back, because that is the last thing that an appraiser will do. Of course, we take the square footage of the home into consideration. That would be crazy not to do. It's half of what we do. But putting it all together is kind of counterproductive. So here we go. I'm going to show you an appraisal grid. Now, I apologize if everyone is like, God, Steve, we all know appraisers. You guys are all jerks. I've seen an appraisal report, but I just want to show you. Let's see, share content, share screen. Let's see here. All right, what is going on here? Let's see here. How do I share it? Is it going? Can you guys see this report?
No, it's just a lovely picture of you.
That does not exist. I have not taken a lovely photo before, so please don't patronize me. Let's see, it says I'm sharing my screen. You guys can't see this appraisal?
No, it's just you with a beer there, making us all thirsty.
You know what? My wife was telling me, she was like, you know what? You should probably not do that, because you need to look more professional. And I said, it's the only photo I've taken that doesn't make me look horrible. So let's use it. Okay, let's see here.
Not true.
Share
And by the way,
content.
I love your Sam Cooke photo in the back.
Sam
One of
Cooke
my
is my
favorite
all-time
artists.
favorite musician of all time. Yeah, I have a whole wall of his downstairs. So he's
Nice.
great. Let's just see here. All right.
Looks like we're seeing some things pop up here. Yeah, there
Bam.
we go.
Is that, can you see it?
We got it. Looks like an appraisal report.
Nice. All right. So here's a grid of one that I did just a few weeks ago. And it is in Buckeye, Arizona, down here south. And you can kind of see this is just what we look at all the time. But the grid is very broken down to individual things. And you can go, let's just look at comp one. This is the one right here, right? That's the comp that typically appraisers say we put most weight on, or we lean more heavily on. We have to explain in the actual body of the report which ones we do. So in this case, I'll explain to you why I'm sort of going back and forth. But so the first thing we see here is, all of this is just your typical data, right? It's sold for this. There's your MLS number, days on market. Obviously, we come down here, no shock here. That's our terms and everything like that. And this is obviously our sales date. Okay, so right here on the sales date, you'll see your sold date and then your contract date, which is the larger numbers always up front, just because, that's sometimes how long it takes. But here we go. So check this out. The next section we have, we're going to come over here and we have all of this is the exact reason why we cannot lump everything into a price per square foot, and why doing it is really misleading to viewers. So viewers of the report. So you take first, this is a neutral residential location. You can see here, this one is a beneficial golf course. Now, you can say that it goes on the view line. This one, I didn't put it on the view line because it was a little slightly different in the subdivision. So, and again, this is different strokes for different folks. Another appraiser could put it on that other line, and no harm, no foul. It is what it is. The same adjustment, if it was here, is going to be down here if you do it like that. So in reality, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just a taste and what you want to do. And honestly, a lot of this, and this is going to become my second point today, a lot of it is what the lender likes to see. Today, lenders are more critical of appraisals than I think I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But anyway, so check it out. So then you have over here, this is the fee simple terms. That's always going to be the same out here in Arizona. This is in Hawaii. Mostly everything is like that over here. Site, this is our square footage of our lot. So you can see this one right here on comp 3, it's got a larger lot, but there was no adjustment for it because it was in that realm. And I'll be honest, this isn't a 55 plus age restricted community, and those people typically, those buyers do not care about an extra couple hundred square feet. Most times they don't care if it's an extra 1,000 or even 2,000 because they don't use the land like an all age subdivision would do. They don't typically put in pools and all this other stuff and want to get their value back. That's just not sort of common for the area. So in this particular case, that was the case. Okay, so then here neutral, we're just residential. You're looking at houses. That's about the same. Our style, this is where things get a little more up to the appraiser's term. You'll see a lot of different descriptions for a lot of different houses. Now up in flag, you will see people use log, you'll see rambler, you'll see cabin, you'll see a lot of different terms, but all you really care about is this. Make sure that you get it correct, that it's a 1-story or a 2-story. Now I'll go into another factor here in a second, but I have to educate people on basements out here a lot because basements are very uncommon in Arizona, but they are out there. Okay, so this next one is your quality. Your quality, now these get really complicated and you have to read this. I'll be honest, the breakdown of what Fannie Mae wants us to sort of explain about what's a C4 and a Q4 is very hard to understand. It's sort of a built-in knowledge of what's happening there, but the quality is not the current condition of the home. It was how it was built. Is it a super custom home? Is it a Pulte tract home? That kind of thing. The quality factor is sort of an underlying what it was like when it was built. So you can see right here, every single one of those ones is the same. They're all Q4s. This is a tract neighborhood, but anyway, the point is the quality is not the condition. The quality, again, would be kind of how it's built. Does it have a lot of super unique features and blah, blah, blah. Okay, next is age. And you can see there's no adjustment for age right here because they were all pretty close. Even this one that was significantly newer, and I'll show you why we can prove that there was no value for that difference in either being too new or a little bit older, right? I'll show you in a second with the thing that appraisers use called match pairing. Next up, we have condition, which is this section right here. And that's the same sort of set of rules as quality, except it's a C rating. Now, this is the one that appraisers and agents will see right up front and know right off the bat what's going on. And again, the descriptions of these are very long and they're written by attorneys who listen to other attorneys who listen to regulation, and it's kind of hard to understand. But really, the one thing to know is a C4 condition home is your typical home. It's got some wear and tear, nothing really obnoxious or that's going to result in any lowering of a value or anything like that. So all of these homes you can see right here are all the same condition. They're all within, I would say, what's reasonably similar. So this is where, if you've got a remodeled home, bam, that's where you're going to see that extra value. If they have new granite countertops or new tile flooring, or they epoxied the garage and everything is new, the condition is what changes first because it is an upgraded condition. And remember, these numbers go backwards. So a C1 would be brand new, never lived in, spotless home. Yeah, just like open, welcome to the house. This is the first time people have even breathed in here. A C6 would be, it is not livable. So I've done a couple of C6s. Usually those were big in the foreclosure times where it's just trashed and the land is actually worth more than the structure. So beware of a C6. A C5 is still not great, but definitely repair worthy and things like that. And then we'll get down here. So this is the square footage section. So we can already see that I have broken out lots, what they see, their sizes, their quality, their age, their condition, and their time of sale. So lumping that all together in one thing, you can already see why it's problematic, because what appraisers do is we literally look at all of this stuff and break it down so tightly and individually, we don't lump it together. So using a total sort of cumulative price per square footage, again, the term misleading sounds like I'm saying you guys are doing something wrong, and you're not. It's just, it's misleading to everybody involved. If someone goes, well, I should have no problem. Mine is 3,000 square feet, which means my price per square foot in the area is going to easily meet value, easily meet contract, you know, and it doesn't. A lot of times that will throw you off so much that you can't ever really focus again. It's a big distraction. So that's where we're getting it. The rest of this down here is typically unchanged. Functional utility. This right here is a section for, does the house function correctly? The only time that you typically see a change in this is bizarro houses from the 70s that have weird rooms and floors. Those big sunken down, you remember those things that were like those sunken down, like hot tub looking circles in the living room? It was like you're sitting, or conversation pit is what they used to be called. Yeah, those are so outdated now that people fill those in with concrete. So if you go into a house that's got shag carpeting, and you know, one of those hot tub wannabe things in the middle of your living room, you may see something right here for that, because not a potential buyer isn't going to come in and see this house with the weirdo hot tub thing in the floor as the same as this one, which is your regular sort of Pulte home. This one would be considered, like, I would call it inferior, or fair would be a typical term that an appraiser would use on that sort of thing. Heating and cooling, this is typically always the same: forced air, air conditioning, energy efficient items. This just says that it's a market sort of standard to have dual pane windows, energy efficient items when they're available. Where this changes is when you get into like lead homes and anything like that. So if you own solar, now I just did an appraisal this morning where they want value for their leased solar, and you do not get a penny for a leased item. You have to own it outright. And sometimes the appraiser will ask for proof. I haven't done that in a while, because you can kind of tell who's sort of pushing the envelope or who's not. But solar would be right here. So you would see solar, you would see geothermal heating or cooling. Prescott has a lot of geothermal. They dig down into those mountains so that in the summer they can pull up that air from 100 feet below grade and cool the house more naturally without using a lot of electricity. So that's where you would see this. The next section is obviously garage carport. Very easy to understand. Sometimes you will have a 2-car garage with a carport, and you'll just see an extra little thing that goes, you know, 2CPT. And then you'll know that you have a 2-car garage, 2-car driveway, and 2-car carport. But anytime there's a difference on any of these things, appraisers do what I call, well, what they call, like what I call, like I invented this, what a narcissist, is called an adjustment. This is an adjustment. Okay, this is an adjustment. This is lack of adjustment, and then these are adjustments. So here you go. This is how that works. And this is what match pairing is. So this is a really great report because I chose sort of a simple one so everyone can kind of see what we're doing here. Let's see if I can get rid of all this yellow. Here we go. Okay, let's take a look real quick. So here's your clean report. Pretend those numbers aren't there, right? But you can see comp 1 is on a golf course, comp 2 is on a golf course, and comp 3 is on an interior lot. And if you want to know what we are, you just come over here, and this is us. This right here, this is our house. This is the one that I'm appraising and all of its specific details. So from over here, you get these 2 comps, and it's unavoidable that I had to use these 2 comps. Not a whole lot of resales in this neighborhood that were on interior lots, so I had to take those ones and use them. But when you look at these sales prices, 377, 390, 355, you can slowly start realizing that if you match them out, that's called match pairing. So you're matching them with another one to get that dollar amount that that item is worth. So this is a great one because if you notice, this contract date 5/21, this contract date 5/21, perfect. Now one closed a little bit later. It could have been a day or 2 that creeped into July, but this one also closed right around that same time. So if you take the math of 355, which is this guy that's similar to us on an interior lot, right? Interior, we're not on a golf course, and you just do basic math and you match pair them out. And this ended up being what I think is about a 5% adjustment. So when you match those out, that's like a 5%. My handwriting is hilarious on anything, but especially on an iPad. So you would take away, you subtract it because this house is superior. Comp 1 is superior. It has a better location. Comp 2 has a better location, and comp 3 is very similar, right? When you look down at it, comp 3 is pretty much identical to us. 3-bedroom, 2 bath is us, 1694. You guys all know as well as I do. age restricted neighborhoods typically don't have more than 2 bedrooms. If they do, it's like a den kind of thing that's put in there. So the value that I kind of determined on here was the exact same way. If you look right here, I have what I call, or what everyone calls, bracketing. So our house has 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and 1,600 square feet. I need to solve for what is that extra bathroom worth? That bedroom, sorry. These 2 have an extra bedroom, right? I mean, one less than us. So I need to figure that out. So since at this point, we've come down here and we've used the match pairing up front, you kind of scroll down a little bit and you can see, okay, so it's about 10 grand. And you do that math and look at the bottom. I mean, when you look, just cut to the chase, 365, 368, 368. I mean, that is less than 1% of a range. And the range would be, what's the difference from the lowest to the, I guess it would be this one, to the top. And that range right there is what, $2,200, 20 something, you know, it's whatever it is, it's small. So this grid turned out to be really tight, further proof that all of my numbers fell into line pretty closely. So you will see other appraisals that people do. Like I just did this, how much was it? Purchase price was 10 million. And then I brought it in a significantly lower. It was a new build, but there are adjustments on every one of these lines. And you have to I spent stupid amount of time doing the research, coming up with what those things are. But to sort of sum up this part, and then I'll open it up for questions if you want. That is what an appraisal grid looks like. That's what we do. And that's why we can't and won't ever use the price per square foot, if you will, as you guys do. That's just not how it goes. So that's what it looks like on a grid, an appraisal grid. So screen broadcasting, let's see here. I'm gonna stop, dude, you have stopped the screen. Am I still here? Okay. So anyway, that's what the appraisal grid looks like, and that's what we do. So Melinda, do you want to open up for questions per section, or do you want to wait till sort of the end?
Well, sure. So this would be a good time. That was a lot of information, and you're like me, Stephen. We talk fast, we think fast, and so sometimes, as I've learned, it may take a little bit of time for some of that information to register. So let it soak in a little bit. I may have you pull it back up just because I think I've got some questions that I would like to go through. I kind of like the minutia, so if I bore the rest of you, I apologize, but just trying to get a better understanding on the appraisals, how you arrive at some of those numbers. So. But for the rest of you, absolutely, please use the Q&A box to go ahead and start thinking and putting those questions in there, and I will pause to address those questions and have Stephen answer them. But if you could put that appraisal back up, just so I can reference a couple of things, might be easier for
sure. I can do that right now. Share screen. Here we go. Stop broadcast. Yeah, and I know I do go rapid fire, but I have found that if I spend a lot of time on those, a lot of times people think I'm patronizing them or explaining
Sure.
what agents already know, and I don't want to be that guy. So I've noticed that on this one, people typically kind of understand the general broad strokes of it. But here, I'll erase everything on here. But
no, absolutely not. You don't know what questions people are going to have by any means, and so no, it's great. It's fantastic. And like I said, I kind of like the minutia as I try to understand these. And I recommend all of you, even when if you're the seller, as a listing agent representing the seller, ask if the buyer doesn't mind sharing that appraisal with you. Sometimes I've had some where I didn't have the market comps to justify the price that we were putting it on, but the market, lack of inventory, we knew what kind of desire was there. I'm like, okay, let's go for it. And I myself, being very statistically driven, data driven, very hard time because I like to have stats and information to prove whatever it is that I'm going to do to support that. And in this market, sometimes we don't, and we're still able to kind of aim high and land even higher sometimes in this market. So it is very confusing, and it is concerning because things are moving very fast. And how long will it continue to escalate, and when will it stabilize, and are we anticipating a drop? That's a whole different conversation, and not one that we'll ask you to whip out a crystal ball with there, Stephen. But I think just
bring it on. While I don't have a crystal ball, appraisers are so statistical. And like I was saying, my next thing I want to talk about is kind of what lenders are up to today. And so we do have to kind of make predictions. And I hate to brag, but I kind of nailed it starting like in March. So appraisers spend a stupid amount of time going over, like you said, minutia data, tracking the differences. And it may not look like a huge change in supply one week or even 2 or 3 rolling weeks, but you have to start tracking that. And appraisers have a whole section in the appraisal report. And if you don't want to get dizzy, watch away real quick. Ready? Let's see if I can scroll over there. I did this on purpose. Let's see. So this is the whole report. Wait a minute. I can just click that. Bam. This is a form called the 1004 MC. This came out after the Dodd-Frank sort of, oh yeah, I didn't cross out the address. No one ever saw that, right? There you go. What's it called? It came out after the 08 recession, and Fannie Mae, Freddie, all of the people that mattered came up with this form that is now required in every single appraisal pretty much. I haven't seen an appraisal report come through a request in a decade without this as sort of just a common sort of thing. It has to be in there. But this is raw data from MLS. And how appraisers pull this section of data is it's unique to each individual appraiser. If there's not a whole lot of resales or comps in the area for us to use, we will have to broaden it out to homes that are not necessarily directly comparable to ours, but maybe they're in that world, just to get a good sample size of data to put into this report. So you can see on this one, this is pretty much exactly what everybody has been talking about and has said, right? Here we go. So in the past 7 to 12 months, that goes from there to this huge jump right here, okay? And then if you want further proof, this is what the lenders are looking at a lot now, is low list prices. You can see this is all increasing. So this is a very good one because it shows everything is going up still. This one is interesting because this current 3 months jumped significantly from 299 to 343. This bottom line is also pretty cool. It's one of my favorites. And this shows you your list to sales price ratio. So where I'll be honest, in Greater Maricopa, up there in Flag, I was just up there doing 3 last week. I'm seeing this number right here creeping down. And that means that there's going to be people out there, buyers. And there's been a really big article on Forbes and Fox and CNN and I think it was Yahoo Money over the last week and a half. And they're all quoting the same sort of source. But buyers today are not willing to spend top dollar like they were over the last year. Supply is slowly growing. Now, this is this bizarro neighborhood in Buckeye. I wouldn't really quote this as a good example because it's age restricted. It's kind of small. The subdivision is called Sundance. I don't know if anybody knows it, but it is a interesting little neighborhood with a lot of potential. And it's one of the only ones like it in the area. So, you know, it is what it is. And this one is still going strong. Most areas are still going strong, but there are some markets that I and every other appraiser and now professional economists are noticing that this shift is taking a turn. And I don't have to get into that right now, but that is kind of what it is. But anyway, so here's their grade backup if anyone wants to banter about that.
And so I noticed too that the concessions, salary concessions at 3% that we're seeing there. And so I think that's good news to share with your buyers is that we may be able to, because the buyers are coming out of pocket quite a bit nowadays, coming up and above. And it's confusing sometimes because like I had mentioned, sometimes we're listing higher than what the stats show, and yet we're getting offers significantly higher than what the comps would justify as well. And then the appraisal comes in and it's winning. And it's like, I'm not quite sure how they're getting these comps. If it's selling for $235,000 over list price, which didn't have stats to support the list price, or, you know, $100,000 over and there's nothing else in that neighborhood. So maybe if there's a way to, and again, you know, appraisers are going to do things slightly different. And so it's confusing just when we think that we've, you know, and I know by working with different appraisers, I can kind of understand their reports and how they're going to adjust certain things. And I'm sure a lot of agents, after working for a few years and seeing appraisal reports from different appraisers, we kind of have a sense of how well they typically come in or not sometimes. And so that's confusing. I know you can't speak on other appraisers' behalf. And so I think that's why it's so important to kind of understand how you're making those adjustments. And for instance, I'll get back to my initial question with the report up here, is if we're looking at the location you had mentioned and the site really not being that different. And of course, it's important to note that, you know, if we're on areas specifically in Flagstaff where there's acreage, does it really come down to what that utility is? What's the best function? What's the best use of that land? Is that how we're looking at the location and the site adjustment values?
Yes, ma'am. And I apologize. You know, I picked this one because it was a very simple one to understand. I could have brought up another one that would show you the diversity of lots and what they have. Because like I said, this one I did was very rare. I don't usually get a cookie cutter property like this, but you are absolutely right. So when you come up with acreage and locations like wooded backgrounds, that kind of stuff, there is definitely a difference compared to what you're looking at on the screen. This is sort of rookie level. And again, I apologize for bringing this one up, but this has always been a good example, something simple to wrap your mind around. So there is no set number. And this is something that I do a podcast with a really popular appraiser who has one of the best shows tailored to agents, and his name is Brian C. Lee, if you want to look him up. And his show is called Appraisal Between the Lines. It's an appraisal show meant for agents, and he is absolutely the best at explaining all of this. But the one thing that he really detests is when an appraiser says, I can't do that, or they won't allow me to do that. That is absolutely false. If you ever hear an appraiser say, I can't, or they won't allow, or it's against the rules, that is already a bad appraiser. And I hate appraisers' biggest rivals today are other appraisers. Appraisers are, I'm going to be honest, they're just jerks.
Well, when you say I can't do that, give us an example. What are they saying that they can't do?
So this is a really good example. They will, an agent will start bringing up comps. By the way, if you're not coming up with comps to give to your appraiser, please start doing that. It helps everybody. Get them right off the bat. When they call you to set up an appointment, always know that there's going to be an appraiser coming over there. If they're getting a loan, you're getting an appraisal, right? So having comps that you use to sort of lean on your list price, if you have those things up front, it saves us a stupid amount of time. And it also puts us on the same page from the get-go. Instead of us just digging it and finding it on our own, and then we have a separation of opinion. If we can see right away what you're doing, that's that. But anyway, here's my favorite one is, we'll be doing an appraisal and an agent will be like, well, yeah, there's these 3 perfect comps and they're right over here. And they will say, I can't use those ones because they are over a mile. Or they'll say, we can't use those because those closed over 90 days ago. We can't. Oh, I can't use these 2 comps because they're on a golf course. We're not on a golf course, so I can't use those comps. If you ever hear an appraiser say that, your red flag should be up. There should be a warning right now, because there is nowhere in any world of appraisal. It's not in Fannie Mae. It's not in USPAP. It's not even in policy guidelines by lenders. It's just not. You can do anything you want on an appraisal. So for this example, like I told you, I had to use these 2 comps that were on better locations because there was nothing better. There were no other better comps. Everything was 1,100 square feet versus our 1,600, which would have, that's a totally different house. It's almost double the size.
Well,
totally different potential buyer.
How'd you get almost 19,000 and 19,500 for the other one? Where does that number come from?
So this one, you kind of have to play with the numbers and back it in a little bit, but this, I believe, and I have to bring up my calculator. I don't have it now, but you kind of just start working into it. So this one right here, I started with like minus 5%. And I'll put
maybe
that on
that's
there.
where I was confused. Where did the 5% came? You did that before, but I missed the math breakdown. The 5%.
So just perfect. That's awesome. Okay. So let's just pretend that this isn't right here, right? You can't see this. You can't see this. All we know right now is that this one and this one sold for significantly more than this one, right? So you already know that this one over here, comp 3, is on a very similar interior lot to ours. And these ones are better on a golf course, right? So that right there shows that the clear difference between comp 3 and comps 1 and 2, the main factor here is that golf course location. So I started with comp 1 just because I'll be honest, I don't know why I started with this one. I probably could have reorganized them to be a little cleaner, but either way. So I see this 377 sales price. I see that the square footage is barely 100 square feet larger than ours, and I don't adjust if it's anything under 110 square feet. I just don't do it. Most appraisers don't do it at 100 square feet, but I added an extra 10 because homeowners get really upset if you start adjusting on something that's slightly too small. So I sort of do it like that. But anyway, that's that. So I see that these comps right here are very similar. Oh, that's why I use this one right here, is because this one was 1,800 square feet. Okay. So I look at this one right here and I say, all right, let's compare these 2 together, comp 1 and comp 3. They're very similar in square footage. This one's slightly smaller, but both of them are comparable to us at 1694. So really the only big difference between these two, this one and this one, is what? The golf course. That's the only real significant difference between these two, outside of what is that, 133 square feet. But like I said, that's not a huge factor out here in this neighborhood. So I start doing the math and I take 377K minus 355K. You take that and you will get a number very similar to my 18 grand, right? Whatever that is. So I can't do 18,000 on this one too, because it's not apples and oranges. This is a different one. This is an 18. It's very similar. This one has 3 bedrooms versus 2. So I always do a standard sort of a percentage adjustment, because when you ask potential buyers today, most buyers say, oh, I would spend an extra 5% for a pool. People today speak in terms of percentage, especially with values going super high, because the dollar amounts don't always translate. You can't always say, I'll pay an extra 10 grand for a pool. That doesn't work on a $1 million property, because pools aren't 10 grand. They're 110 grand. So with that, you use a percentage. And that's why the numbers between these two, comp 1 and comp 2, have a different adjustment, because you used a percentage. And like I said, I think I used 5%. That seems about like what I would have done right
So
here.
5% was basically just kind of an arbitrary number that you use. It had nothing to do with the math and the difference of the sales prices.
Well, actually, it was an arbitrary is true, but also not really. When you take the 377 subtracted from 355, what does that come out to? 377, 377, 355. That is 22. So 22,000. So no, 2,200. Sorry. No, 22,000. That's right. You would see that the difference is $22,000 for this golf course lot if you just did those two. But then you also have to take into consideration that we're not adjusting them to each other. We're adjusting them to the subject. And the subject has an additional bedroom, which if you use the same sort of principle, 22, 18. So I guess I did, was that 3%, 5%? The percentage is a rough number based on this sort of direct math. So you take the differences between the two, you sub them out, you get a number, and then you experiment with that number. So if I did 18,000 here, and 18,000, which is almost the same thing, it's pretty much what I came up with. Now, this is also just like my knowledge. Lenders hate solid number adjustments on something like golf course or condition or whatever. They hate it, and QC reviewers will absolutely tear an appraiser up today for using that. They will say, well, where's the proof that it's exactly $5,000 or $10,000? And you can say, well, I match paired comp 2 to comp 3. And then their response will be like, well, yeah, but if you match paired comp 2 to comp 3, you get a slightly different number. And so that for that reason, I use percentages. Lenders have been way too finicky to start using hard numbers. Something like this, that's pretty easy, because you can literally say, all right, once you do that, it's a 10 grand adjustment. And like I said,
think that's where, hold on, just to go back to that. So when you're talking about, you're referencing it's got a different bedroom on there. So you're making the adjustment to the golf course, but you're already making adjustments for the bedroom as well too. So that's why it's a little bit confusing.
It is, and a lot of it, agreed. And again, and sorry, I'm rushing through this, but you're absolutely right. This right here is kind of what they consider the 90% section. This is what is commonly referred to as the 90% section. That's actually a term that's used by Fannie Mae and USPAP, which is our appraisal sort of Bible, if you will. The 90% section is what people typically see right off the bat. How big is that lot? Are we a 1-story, 2-story? Do we have a basement? How new are we? What's our quality? And more importantly, since we're on it, where are we located? Is there any sort of a factor? So it is crucial to look at these numbers first. And I didn't invent this appraisal form. Some geniuses from 1912 did. And they realized that in this order is what potential buyers look for. We all think that it's square footage, but really when you you guys know better than I do, when you go out there with someone, they aren't just like smitten with, oh, this one's 4,000 versus that last one. They are looking at, oh man, this one is on a golf course. That's where people become humans and they start looking at the fun stuff. Oh my God, look at that remodel. Oh, that bathroom is fantastic. All of a sudden, when you start showing them fancy things like that, these numbers in this below section, they start to become less important. people start to say, okay, I can do that. But anyway, this is the section that I always and most appraisers do first is let's get these hard line items out of the way. And then the rest kind of falls into place. A lot of appraisal is backing into it. And that sounds like that's not fair or relevant, but it is. This one right here, you can't argue that the difference between our house at 1694 and 1804, that little difference is as important as that. No one is going to really care about something the size of, half of an office versus being on the golf course, right? So in this case, those are most definitely the most important factors, which is why I start with those. I came up with that adjustment based on pairing these two out. Then the rest kind of falls into place, and then you can see, okay, so it is it's around 10 grand. And then not to keep on tooting my own horn, when you look at the bottom, it clearly shows that I'm pretty close to being spot on. Yeah, a $3,000 range or $2,000 is absolutely nothing. So that's kind of how I do it. And I would say most appraisers do it that way. And it's not always just because, oh, I want to do it this way or whatever. A lot of it is what that lender wants. And appraisers know lenders better than anybody, but not necessarily the lenders. They know their policies because they're in a 14-page engagement letter. So you can kind of gauge what the lender wants and their quality review departments, what they want, which leads you to sort of knowing how to do all of this stuff. But this is a very broad strokes. But yeah, this number right here did come first because I know this is a big red flag. A lender is going to say, why did we use 2 golf course lots? So I have to go through and come up with that number first. They don't really care about a bedroom difference or a tiny difference on square footage. They want to know this. Lenders want that. Underwriters want to know what this is worth and why did they get used? Why can't we just do a whole appraisal based on this? Why can't that appraisal just be, all right, this comp is very similar to us. That value is 355, which it pretty much, they wouldn't be that wrong, except the shy a bedroom. So you have to add that dollar amount to that bedroom. But you know what I mean? That's kind of how they do it.
And what's also kind of weird is that we've seen some appraisers where they'll only make adjustments for room or they'll only make adjustments for square footage size. And so some, as you've done here, will show adjustments for both.
Oh, and you can, you definitely can. So, and that's absolutely a great point. Appraisers are finicky, they're babies, and they have their own ways and they don't like to be told what to do. I typically, depending on the neighborhood, and we're all in sort of a tract area in Arizona, there's obviously unique ones out there. Buyers typically, when it comes down to throwing it down and looking at these things, they a lot of times lump those together. And they'll say that this $10,000, I'm willing to pay $10,000 extra for 100 square feet, which does include a bedroom. It's kind of a common practice to lump them together, but you don't have to. You can do it any way you'd like. However, it makes sense on your grid, and the appraisal has to be well explained. So, I mean, I personally, in this one, wouldn't have to do it because this one has our same bedrooms and bath, but it's larger. This one only had a difference of bedroom. So,
and how do you make adjustments for the difference in square footage? Like, how did you get the 2,200?
Oh, so the 20, well, first of all, so this is another good example of how an easy one looks. And this is why it takes so long to become an appraiser today, is answer that question. Between our house and comp 3, and by the way, there's more comps on this grid, there's listings. Between those ones, this is a very tight grid. So I didn't have to spend a lot of time figuring out the square footage adjustment, but I ended up making it at $20 a square foot. That's where that number's from. And again, you do that the same way. You come through here and you figure out the big strokes. The big ones are golf course. And then when you realize that our house is weird and it has an extra bedroom for this neighborhood, let's see what that value is worth. Then after those are done, because these ones are so close to each other, you can kind of just back into that number. So without doing it that way, say I started at $40 a square foot. If I did 40, this would have been minus 4,400. And that would have made this one 364. Nope, that would have been 362, 7, right? 362.7. And that doesn't quite mesh, does it?
So the $20 a square foot, is that based on any other type of math? For instance, I know some will use the Radimer method where you take the selling price per square footage of the 3 comps and divide it and use
No,
30 to 40% of that, and that's how you arrive at your percentage number.
no. And this is actually an awesome topic because like what I said earlier, appraisals say I can't do this or whatever, which is false. They can do whatever they want. That's kind of an unwritten no. We don't use averages. We don't use medians when it comes to placing a value. It's up to how you want to do it. But just going with one specific way of doing it, it could just be specific to that one appraiser. So that's not how I do it. I've never, ever done it. And the people that trained me a long time ago had a policy on do not do that. And nowhere in the report do we want to see average written anywhere, because it opens you up for more, sort of attack, I guess you could say. And we always have to look for ourselves. And if you just say it's an average, a homeowner could be like, well, why did you go for the average? I'm nicer than this comp and this comp. You should have gone to the high end of the range, which is what we hear literally every inspection that we do now is we're better than those other two, when usually they're very similar.
So do you adjust that percentage but the $20 per square foot based on quality, condition, or does that
Nope.
number change?
No, this always changes on every report, every single one. Like I said, I just did these really hard ones this last weekend. That the adjustments were $400 a square foot. One was $375. One was $200. And it's just how it works out when you're typing up the grid. So when it comes down to how you actually do it and make your mind up on where you're going to do it, that is all very unique to the appraiser. So if you were going to include the square footage and this together, the square footage and the bedroom count, this number would probably be higher because you're including everything, right? So maybe it is 40. It's just one of those things that it's depending on the appraiser, which is why appraisers are never going to be in line. It's all very up to how they want to do things. And they don't like to sort of be told to do it a different way. Lenders today will send out a list of requirements that changes honestly by the week now. And just so we're very clear, lenders today are nervous. They are seeing trends and they are seeing things that do not look good. Now, I want to be really clear because I get this question all the time. No one thinks that there's going to be a big decline or a recession again or anything like that. But there will be a value leveling out that is seen right now in most of the hot areas. So they're not to go off on that topic, but to further my point, lenders are freaked out about that because they don't want to be losing all of this money again, like they did no wait, right? So now they have more specific rules, way more specific rules than they used to. Now you're pretty much, I hate to say this, most of the time you are writing this appraisal, instead of you're not writing it for the homeowner or the buyer or the seller, you're literally writing it to a quality review team. You have to spoon feed them these answers. And while they typically understand the broad strokes, with open sort of conversation and nervousness becomes way more regulation and way more specifics that appraisers are being told to do. So maybe that'll be a good thing. Maybe if every lender starts telling appraisers, we want to see this right here separate from this. We want, you used 110 as an adjustment. No, we want to see it down to 50. And at that point, the appraiser has to decide if they want to take the order or not, because now they were just instructed on how to do it. And most appraisers hate being told how to do things. So a lot of this new direction and confusion changes based on what the policy of the lenders are. And if you're getting an appraisal, you have a lender involved. The only time you're not is if one of the people here ordered a pre-appraisal before a listing, then it's just up to the appraiser. But almost every other situation with an appraisal, in the broad strokes of things, it's because a lender's involved. And with a lender comes QC, underwriters, and another 4 levels of quality review. It's pretty ridiculous today. So I know I just made a huge circle around your question, but the point is appraisers can do whatever they want until someone tells them that they need to do it a different way. And then it's up to the appraiser to either stick to their guns and word it their way or to sort of conform to what the lender wants. So that's why you're always going to see a variance between what appraisers do. Sadly, it's just sort of in the nature of the profession.
I don't understand why it's called a uniform appraisal.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the uniform
Believe me,
about it?
No, absolutely. So when they changed this form, this all right over here, you could have written anything you wanted. So like, for example, I cannot write the term 1 story in that spot like I used to. You can't. It will not allow you. Your report, it won't let you get past it. It says that's not a known term. You have to change it. So then it goes back and you have to use something that they approve. You can't do a different quality rating. You just can't. You can't do anything different here. This is a Dropbox. When you fill these out, you get like a selection of things to type in there that are approved. So when they say uniform, they did tighten it up so that most of these things were a little similar. This right here used to be the bane of everybody's existence, is what I would say is average. Someone else would say as typical, or someone else would say as normal. So they said, nope, we're done with that. We're putting everybody together and you're going to use a C1 through 5 rating. You're going to use a Q1 through 4 rating. And I don't want to see effective age right here. We need to see the actual age, because all of these things before, it was kind of like the Wild West for appraisers. We could write whatever the hell we wanted, but now you can't. They're telling you what you can put in this section. None of what I wrote in here was Steven, the guy writing it for fun. That's literally drop down boxes on things that I'm approved to do. So you're right. It is very subjective to the appraiser, but the form itself has been made more uniform.
Gotcha. And let's see, we'll start answering some questions here. I know that there's a few questions. Michael, you had your hand raised. So if you want to take yourself, let's unmute you and go ahead and ask.
What's up, Michael? How's it going, buddy? Oh no, my rant, he left.
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, how's it going, man?
Yeah, not too bad. I have a question in the fact that you have seen a drop in asking prices and possible sales prices in the last 2 months, which I expected. What I'm coming from is 14 years of my figures, which aren't necessarily correct because everybody's got their own theory.
Exactly. I love that someone just said that, by the way, because you can tweak the numbers however you want. I love that someone out there at least acknowledges that. Well done. I'm a big fan of yours now.
Okay, so now here's where I'm coming from. I understand that we've been closed up for a year. I understand that it's summertime, and from July 1st to September 6th or whatever, we are the last of the 2 times that the COVID has slowed, and there are 2 chances in a year and a half, 2 years of family vacations. And in certain parts of our state, we're 110 degrees. So when you add all that together between July 1st, or actually June 25th to like the 15th of September, you have 1/2 to maybe 1/3 the buyers that are available, because they're not buying, they're trying to get out. So I'm going to see a switch that where our prices are going to be going back up starting the 15th to the 17th of September. Now, I don't expect a huge spike or anything like that, but I don't expect you're going to see much leveling before we get to the end of September. How long, if that happens, how long will that take for appraisers to adjust for that? In other words, I'm in a spot where I'm going to list a home after the holiday, because if I list it before the holiday, why do that when everybody's not thinking about buying, they're thinking about the holiday. And I'm going to list it for what I think the house will bring. And if I put in a spot where I have to wait for an appraiser to go a month or 2 before they find out that the prices really did change, I'm kind of in trouble.
Agreed. And that's an awesome question, and one that I have to battle all the time. I teach classes for a bunch of different lender training facilities, and this is literally question 1. So you are absolutely in good company. Everyone's learning the same thing. First of all, you said you've been doing this for like 14 years. You know what's a weird thing about what you said? And I love it because things change, right? Everything changes. Do you remember when you were a kid and when I was a kid, and all of this time, you bought your houses during the spring so that you could move after the school year was over? What you just said was now completely different than what the trend was from 2000 to 2010. In
Correct.
Those times when those numbers were going up, you would buy and move during the summer. That's when you had time. I understand it's hot as hell out here. No one wants to be outside lugging stuff, but there is a point to it. So what you're saying does make sense. It did shut down over the summer a little bit. It slowed in most places. Some of the key areas. COVID. Well, yeah, true. Now, I don't disagree with you on that at all. Here's the weird thing, though, is while it's slowed down, the supply has gone up between 2 and 6% per month in all of these areas, and it's giving buyers way more options.
Correct.
First of all, for things to go back up, that supply will have to get eaten away again. So there will have to be a ton of new buyers coming in to eat up that available supply. By the way, lenders now are requiring an appraiser use 2 active listings now. It used to just be 1 or even none. Now they need to know 2. They need to see what is out there in the area. I just had to cut 2 sales this week, and I hate cutting sales when they're close because the listings were coming in 25 to 38% under the sales price of the subject. And my point is, when that's taking place, why would any educated buyer spend 25% more for this house when they could spend it more effectively over here? That supply will have to get eaten up first. So if in your world and you think that that's what's going to happen, and it was COVID and it was hot and it's summer, and then starting in the middle of September, all those buyers are going to come back, the first thing before they start increasing in value again is that supply is going to have to go back to what it was before.
What's the
Now, say what?
What's supply? There isn't a
See,
supply.
this is where it's regional, and I do not disagree with you. But if you look at the ARMLS out here, the Maricopa one, because they have a whole section now about this one, and the supply has gone up trackable. Then if you look at nationwide trends, they have gone up even more so than us. The areas that were booming, which was Utah, Idaho, Arizona, Nevada, Montana, those areas were just, there was no end in sight. Those places, they hit a brick wall. Montana, Idaho, Utah's still kind of chugging along, but they hit a brick wall. You can track it to around July 15th. Something happened and people started spending their money in a different way. So the other thing to look at here, and this is one of the most interesting things, is to look at the median price of the houses in your area and the median income. So I do Bozeman, Montana, and Bozeman tracks very similarly to Flagstaff. The moderate family of 4 income in Bozeman is $77,000 per year per family, right? But the average home now is $575,000, and that's base. That's like in a very older standard home. Those aren't available anymore. That means that the people living in that area want to go buy things. They don't have that money to do it, and that's resulting in them either staying put or just not buying or trying to get condos, which is why that condo market exploded. I mean, it's a seasonal thing for sure, but I think there's more to it, to be totally honest. And I think that we're not going to be seeing a decline. I would bet a paycheck that you're not going to see a 17% increase through the end of the year. I'm guessing it's going to be around 5, if and that's in a good market. I think it's going to be stabilized.
Oh,
It's a good point talking about inventory. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but when running the stats, we all talk about we don't have any inventory, we don't have any inventory. However, in running the stats for single family homes in Flagstaff from January to the end of July, we actually, and last year as well too, we actually have sold 200 more homes in that same time period compared to 2018, 200 more in 2019 and 200 more in 20 and in 21. And so it's just that the demand has increased such that supply cannot keep up. And so I think that's a lot of where some of the confusion is. We don't have enough. Well, we've sold 200 more than we did in the previous 2 years. So
but we don't have it for the demand.
What's that?
We don't have it for the demand.
I think it has to be regional. It's got to be different strokes for different folks in different areas.
Sure.
Because like I said, I travel around a lot. Park City, Utah, Big Sky, Montana, Bozeman, the West Valley of Phoenix, as a matter of fact, where you used to have the option between 3, which is what led to an appraisal gap and all of that nonsense, right, has now almost immediately gone away. You can take that money that you were approved, and now you have 10 different options, while over the last year you had none or 1. Now there is supply. I mean, I know for a fact that there is in most of these areas.
Oh,
and
no,
like I said,
there will be until the 15th.
See, I want to come back. I want to cycle back. We need to set up a regroup, and it's not going to be an "I told you so." I just want to see what's happening because
absolutely,
I don't think that it's going to go that direction. But if it does, I'll be the first one to track it, and I'll tell you that you're right on.
So if by October 1 the market has changed, how long will it take appraisers to catch up to the market in order to appraise the house correctly?
Yeah, I love it. See, I love this subtle jabs at appraisers, and it's this built-in hostility. But we're on the same team. As a matter of fact, if we don't get it right, your deal doesn't close. So we're all together.
Well, but the problem is, I don't know how you adjust it. I don't know how you come up in 2 weeks.
okay, so okay, first of all, I've never seen a market, and I was here in the recession. I've been doing it in the biggest booming markets in the country. And 2 weeks is and no offense, that's a hyperbole statement. That's a very rapid. I've never seen like, oh my God, my whole world changed in 2 weeks. It's a little slower, but again, regional, the areas that I'm used to, 2 weeks is a very exaggerated statement, not in a mean way. I'm just not used to seeing that.
Right.
But you say appraisers doing it correctly. I want to make sure that everybody's.
They're doing it correctly.
Oh no.
It's just how you are
that...
trained to do it.
Okay, no, absolutely. Well, hold on a second. One side thing though, and this was the last ticket, but we spent so long on the grid that I didn't get to it. Appraisers cannot go, and I say cannot, and I told you say we can't, without heavy resentment, hostility, getting removed from appraisal boards, and in theory being sent to a board for review, going over the highest closed sale in the area. So you say doing it correctly. Sure, you can list it and say, yeah, I'm going to get this one. This is going to sell for, I'm listing it at 250. It could probably sell for 300, blah, 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 right? And say you get offers at 335, but the highest closed sale in the area is 250. If you've got a potential buyer coming in, how do you prove in writing that it's worth an extra $65,000? You can't prove it. I can't prove it because a bank is lending on them, and a bank, the lender is the one that's making that final statement. So
okay, so if you have 3 cash people who are going to offer 300,
well, then that's
the
cash deal is
market.
Cash deals. Yeah, absolutely. And the cash deal is different. If it was a cash market, guess what? I don't have a job.
No, but if you have a loan, and the loan is at 275 or 300, and you get backup deals that are 285, but your highest was 250. Well, not obviously. I would assume that if you have 4 people that are $20,000 to $30,000 over the highest household in the area at that time, that the market is not 250.
So how do you prove that? You have to prove it by other closed sales. So appraisers can use comps that are cash deals. We use it all the time. I wish that there were more, because then I have comps to use. But if it's not a cash deal and it's going 20 bids over and it's going way higher than that list price, the bank is not going to take the risk and lend on it. And an appraiser can't actually even physically prove it because nothing else is closed, which is why listings are suggestions of future trends in the market, right?
So what I have seen are the banks are actually using the appraisal as a guide, because what they're buying is the client. So if the client is putting half the money down on a $400,000 home, which is $50,000 over comps, and he's got an 800 credit score, guess what? The bank takes it.
You mean the bank is going to go over and approve what's over the appraisal? Then that's cool. It's not the lenders that I work for.
Yeah, well, I've gone through, that's a whole nother conversation. We've been doing this
Totally
for a half hour.
Oh, no. And again, most of this is heavily influenced by the lenders, quality review, and underwriters. Underwriters today send me more issues with high values than I've ever seen in my life. So I will find this one that comes in. I'll say the contract is at $1 million, right? This is an actual example. And I use the highest sales possible to get to that sales price because I know that the market is there. The underwriters now are coming back and suggesting comps that are similar to us that sold at 770 and 820. That to me is kind of an undue influence factor. To me, it seems like they're trying to make me lower my value. And I so far haven't succumbed to them because they're not in the area. They don't even have real MLS. So I don't care, but they do that. And some appraisers will buckle to that. But remember, a lender is going to give the appraiser a seriously hard time and potentially remove them from further jobs. If the highest closed sale was at 950 and that purchase price is at $1 million, it's a tough sell. It's again, the jokey hostility between you and me is awesome because no. That's why I say jokey.
No, but I understand.
Any of this to heart.
What I understand is you have a job and there's a certain way to do it. And I understand that. My only question is when I believe the market will flatten and go up before October 1, that will the appraisers show that, or will it be up to the bank at that time to take it if the appraisals don't come in at that point?
That's a good question. I think that the appraisers go by what's happening in the market. They're local experts. That's what we pride ourselves on, and we should know the trends. Like I said, I almost never cut sales because I totally understand the buying trends in the area. Other appraisers love to cut a sale because you can't prove hype. You can't prove hype factors in the area of, like last year, there's no homes available. I better just go put in everything.
Yeah, but
The appraisal.
you just made the comment that the appraisers aren't going to go too far over because
No, they won't.
don't want to be
Well,
unique from a job or from a list. And I
yeah, but
understand that.
absolutely. But that's more of a personal thing that I know from fellow appraisers. You also don't get appraisals approved if you go too much higher over the highest closed sale.
Sure,
And there's
I
a
understand.
reason for that. That's in USPAP and Fannie Mae. So that's not the appraiser being a jerk.
Right.
That's not us even trying to get more work from that lender. That's by the basic appraisal property principles. You have to have a closed sale to prove that that market value is there. And if
Yeah.
you have 12 listings and none of them have closed, that's a red flag too. So you have to rely on closed sales. You can't just put it on hype or what's happening in the market and demand.
Yeah,
You have to have something trackable. That's what we do.
I've always seen the moves in conventional FHA. Obviously, you're kind of stuck. So
Yep, VA as well. Yeah.
I'm gonna quit taking over the time. So
No.
I appreciate it.
Hey, buddy, I appreciate you bringing up the hard questions. I love it.
Thanks, Michael. And hopefully that answered, you had a question here earlier as well in regards to a percent increase or decrease to use under a comp. Did that question get answered in that conversation?
Essentially, I'll just bring it up. Essentially, I almost all my sales that my brother and I do in the state, we get called by appraisers asking us how we came up with the figures that we sold for. And essentially actually had an appraiser who's with a regional company who said that, now this was for the Phoenix metropolitan area, that they were told that they could go up to 1.72% a month over whatever the comp was in the last 3 to 6 months.
Again, that's not a thing. That nowhere in any regulation, in any rule book, in any policy is that a thing. That's not a thing.
I'm just repeating what he told me.
No, that's my point. Is that's why
Yeah.
appraisers are so hard to figure out. Is because some guy literally just told you that they can't go above 17.4%.
No. He said that the minimum increase in price was 1.72% over the last comp.
But that's what I'm saying is it's just, honestly, it's just fake. An appraiser can do whatever they want. And saying that they can't or that's their limit is crazy to me. You can do it. I've made more freaking positive time adjustments in this last year than I thought was even possible, including ones that sold 3 weeks prior. So that's a big deal. So it is what it is. And appraisers are very finicky. They're babies and they do what they want. It's very true. And it's a really tough conversation to have, but it is what it is. And the fact is, that's not a real rule. That's not. They can go 24%. They could go 1%. They could do whatever they want. And at the end of the day, they have to sell their appraisal to that lender. And then that lender has to decide on what they want to do with that one. They can order a second appraisal and a review.
It was the lender allowing at least 1.72. It wasn't under. It was, there wasn't any question. If you had to go 1.72 per month over your nearest comp, that was not even questioned, is what it was. It wasn't a restriction. So, but
that's a good, there you go. It's policy, and policy does come out in the way of questions by them. And that's what I said very clearly before is sadly, we're in a stage where we're writing the appraisals, not to get the value right. We're writing it to an underwriter and to the lender's guidelines. So really at the root of this issue, a lot of it is over restrictive guidelines and things like that the lender wants out of sheer, I believe it's just out of sheer fear. I know that they have key markets that they're really nervous about. And sadly, Arizona is one of them because the increase was more rapid than they think can sustain. And guess what? You guys won't find out about this, but we do. We just started a refinance boom that I think is going to really be weird because all of these people think that they just bought their house, they have built-in equity. When you pay over, you don't. So everyone wants to get their cash back. So as much as frustrated as you are right now, imagine us going into a guy's house or a lady's house who just bought it for 1 million. And then the appraisal came in at 900. And they're like, well, you did go 40 bids over the highest offer. That doesn't mean that there's support for that in the market. So we're both right. We're both wrong. It is what it is, but your sentiment is right. The lenders are really driving what appraisers can and can't do. An appraiser can do whatever they want, but we now have to sell it to an underwriter, and it's kind of a weird stage. It's a weird feeling that I haven't had ever. Now it's so much harder to get an appraisal closed I can't even explain it. And sometimes other appraisers will stick to their guns, and that company will just say, okay, cool, we're going to close your file, what they call deficient, and have another appraiser do the exact same property and see if they get the number that they want. So remember, it's not always the appraiser. A lot of times it is, but the lender, if they have an idea of what that value is, they do not want to overlend. That's just, it's what they do.
Sure. And I thought that as far as it does come back to the lender and what their guidelines are supposed to be, and what I've been told by other appraisers is they really don't. So when we're looking at our comps, we're looking at square footage, we're looking at lot size, all the things that take into consideration, basically in the math of things, they've recommended that we don't go beyond 15, all the way up to 20% in those variances between size, et cetera. Is that
you guys do?
what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, do you guys all do a lot of appraisal contingency clauses?
Oh, almost every offer is going to have the waiver in there. Yeah.
A good difference between a good agent and a subpar agent is that it's got to be education and telling people that, hey, you got 40 offers on this one. If that top offer is going to have a lender, you better have an appraisal contingency, because there's no way to prove that it's worth that. And a lender wants data. They're data driven now.
That's my point, is that the data, they don't want the data to be, when you're comparing the home to the other comps, to not go beyond at most 20% variance in square footage,
I can see,
et cetera.
Yeah, they're just me. Yeah, well, you know what? I haven't seen a number like that. I haven't seen them put a number. I know that there is a number. I used to manage the entire West region of a very, very large lender's appraisal division, and there was a 15% buffer. They said 15% is what we consider reasonable. And if it's over 15, then they would grill the appraiser. They come up with their own market data, and they would combat them back and forth and back and forth. And then a lot of times the appraiser would literally drop out of the file because they're sick of going back and forth. 8 times you guys asked me questions on this one. It is what it is. So lenders are very responsible today for any of the negative sort of opinion, because appraisers are really writing it to what they are allowing you to do. So it's tough. You don't have to do it. You can stick to your guns and say, absolutely not. The highest closed sale was 250. This one closed at 280. I believe that the value is 280. Any other buyer would come in today and do that. And that's kind of how I've leaned on my appraisals for the past year, is lack of supply. If someone else wanted to go buy this home today, there's no other ones available. They are going to have to go over what that last one sold for, just because there's nothing available. So in my mind, you guys are all on the right page. It's just selling that to a lender is really tough today, because they don't like to see anything over the highest closed sale. They just don't. I have one that I'm doing right now that I have to really wrap my mind around, because it is a 3.2 million and the highest closed sale is 2.5. I mean, that's a tough one. There's demand for it. There's a person literally saying, I'm going to pay for it. To me, that should show that the appraised value should be around that area. But would somebody else come and say, so if this guy foreclosed on the property tomorrow and they had to sell it, who's going to come in and buy it? And the good news is, in today's market, anybody will come in and buy it. In 6 months, maybe not.
Right. And that's a good point as far as looking at the equity and the appraisal after people move in. I think it's a good thing to prepare our buyers, to let them know, listen, and that's why we have the market conditions advisory form that we use. But at the same time, when people are looking at houses and considering going that high, have that conversation with them. Let them know, listen, if you're planning on pulling equity out to redo that kitchen that you overpaid for, it may not be possible. So, there's going to have to, and I think we're beginning to see that trend. I think buyers have been bought out. I think they're starting to reach somewhat of the threshold, because we are seeing that in Flagstaff. We're seeing some price reductions. We're seeing some houses actually expire on their listing term and do reductions before they get that price and stay on the market just a little bit longer. So I do feel like we are maybe at the cusp of maybe leveling out a little bit, stabilizing, but so many other factors can control that. So it could certainly be temporary. So we'd love to have you back and talk about, in the next 3-6 months, I'm only
coming back if he's coming back, though, because I've got to cycle back and we're going to do a battle. I'm ready for this. I cannot wait for this, actually. Bring it on, Michael.
Get on call. Well, great. Well, we're already at 15 minutes left. And so again, thanks for the great details. I'll go ahead and address Sherilyn Lewis. Says great info and thank you, ! What value do you give owned solar? That was a great question. That was
awesome question. I just did one today where they leased it, like I was telling you, and they want a lot. Also, it comes down to that same thing as match pairing, but we know with solar how much it costs to put in. And remember, in any appraisal, in anything in the entire world, cost does not equal value. So it also depends on the size, the brand, and how much energy it produces. So a house in Paradise Valley that's 8,000 square feet and the entire roof is solar is going to be significantly different than my Pulte home, you know? So there is no dollar amount that I can tell you is set in stone. It comes with research of other similar properties and figuring out what people are willing to buy. Same exact thing goes for a pool. A pool costs between 40 and 60 grand for something just very basic today. On an appraisal, you're not getting even remotely half of that because people aren't willing to pay for it. That's just not how it works. So sadly, I can't, that's not a really good answer to give a dollar amount figure to. And, you know, it is what it is, but it's such a, I hate being this guy. It's such an appraiser question because there is no real good answer. It depends on that home and it depends on those comps in that market area. Does that market area care? Maryvale Terrace and Central Phoenix, you get nothing for it because they do not care. It doesn't impact them at all. Block, you know, John F. Long homes, you know, whatever, they're pretty efficient in the first place. You put it on there, your electric bill is now $30 a month versus $130. Those people won't pay extra for that. They do not care. So it goes on markets.
Right. And going back to what you looked at, the discrepancy between people were willing to pay for a golf course versus non-golf course, we have to see in our market or in that region, that area, that people have actually wanted to spend more for the house based on that amenity, whether it's solar or anything else.
Yep.
And so until we have that trend, we don't. And it's a little frustrating because we want to encourage energy efficiency items, but right now and over the last 20 years, we have not seen any adjustments to prove that those energy efficiency items are worth buyers paying more, but yet the homeowner is spending more to obtain them, and they may not see the benefits back in their utility bills over the lifespan that they own the home and are utilizing those benefits.
Also, just on a side note, I used to study energy efficient items as was my niche sort of thing for a while. I wanted to master it. Solar today is also one of the weirdest things ever because literally weekly, there's a better version. I don't know if you guys have seen the ones now that are actually shaped as barrel tile that go on top of your barrel tile. You can't even tell that there's solar on the roof. And those ones cost more, but they look significantly better. It's more of a high-end item. Also, if you've noticed, do you remember when solar started being like really readily available in like 07 and 08? They were elevated off of the roof by a standard of 4 to 6 inches so that the technicians could come over there and do maintenance. Do you remember what was happening? They were getting ripped off of roofs with big, strong winds. Mm-hmm. So those ones are not worth as much as the new ones, which have a 1-inch gap, you know, or have a liftable panel. So solar changes all the time. Anything that's technology related is going to be very gimmicky and very fragile in the market because it changes rapidly. 5 years ago, a smart home was like, oh my God, that's 20 grand. It all controls itself. Now it's $400 in Amazon Alexas. Don't you answer me. I know she's back there listening. But you can do it on your own for much less than what you used to pay to do it. Same thing with security systems. No one pays for ADT to go do a $12,000 install anymore, but you can buy 4 drop cams that sync up with your phone. So technology related items are super, it's a gimmick. It's very fragile. And when it comes to giving you a value, it's really tough. You have to find something in the area, but solar's a good one because you just have to find other comps and show what it reflects. So.
Right. Thank you for touching on that. Good question. Cal McCloy's question is, how do you arrive at the condition, C4, et cetera, of comparables that you haven't actually been to and viewed? That's a good one too.
Awesome question. And we have to kind of do a whole thing. Man, I love this group. You guys are wicked smart. Okay. So first of all, photos, MLS commentary, and all of that stuff on comps it's the game changer. If we go through a comp that looks pretty decent from the photos and it has no realtor comments at all, clearly that's some sort of a not arm's length sale. It seems like it could be maybe a short sale, foreclosure, something that was just literally put on there to record that it was on there or whatever. I don't ever use those comps because I have no idea what's happening. Super good point. Did you guys do a whole lot? I'll just ask the group. I don't know if you guys can do raised hands. Any of you guys have COVID appraisals this year where they're all done from the desk? I may have done, I did so many in Flagstaff this whole summer, I can't even tell you. Melinda, you know, because we talked about it when I first was on our diversity group, how weird it is that we're not really leaving our houses anymore. So to answer your question, I just did a whole podcast about this, and I love that you say that because this is going to be a norm. There are going to be shifts in tract or low risk areas where lenders are going to start approving desktop and exterior appraisals in replacement of a full appraisal. So now you're not even talking about just the comparables, you're talking about the subject property. You have to really take those photos from comps, really analyze them, read what the realtor says, and take that for what it's worth. And most appraisers will put in there, comp data was based on MLS and agent commentary. Agent told me it was this and this and this. It is up to the extraordinary assumption that they are accurate, and that's how it works. So it's all based on what you guys give to us. So the more you give us, the better our reports can be for other appraisals down the line. But get ready. There's going to be a shift, I believe, in your typical home, and lenders are going to start slowly allowing desktop appraisals. So,
and then that's a little concerning, because all of us can tell you
be.
that we've been into buyers as well. We've been into houses, the photos look fantastic. And then you get in there and the place is a dump. And I hear this constantly. So this is a great reminder to agents. One, please be accurate. I mean, we all embellish. It's part of marketing. That's what we want to do. We want to be creative and put those best features out there. But please, 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 even if you sell it as a comp and never hits the market, take as many photos as you can. Take photos if it's got granite countertops, or even though granite's kind of standard, but any upgrades that you have with that, put those upgrades in that section. Take the time to put that information in there so that appraisers and the rest of us that are trying to comp some data have the information that we need. So again, at the end of the day, it's an opinion of value.
Yeah, that's my favorite comment, is because who the hell says my opinion is different than somebody else's and who's right or wrong? But you're absolutely right. And it's based on data, and it's based on sort of what is in those MLSs and those listing sheets and those photos. We have to come up with that data based on that. So, you're not wrong. And that's exactly how it works. So
yeah, great.
Take a lot of that for what it
Hope
is.
that answered your question there, Cal. Mark Coletti says, not a question, but if they would share their data sources, I would be super excited to dive deeper on my own. And nice info, 3 exclamations.
Nice. I see. That's way better than 2 exclamations. Share my data. I'm an open book. I love talking with people. I would let you log into my computer and just see what the hell I'm up to. It's just MLS data. And what's our guy that was lightly bantering with me earlier, Michael? He said it the most perfect way possible. And it's, again, why I think that appraisers need to ease up. Is that you can manipulate data to look like whatever you want. So when I pull a big set of data, I will start with like the subdivision, or if there's not enough, I'll draw the box. You guys know the box on MLS. I'll make it like 2 miles, and then I'll start whittling it until I get to a decent number. And then you start taking away the outliers, the little ones, the ones that don't make any sense, or the super high one that just doesn't even track. It makes no sense. And you get to your core sort of data. And then from there, that's where you set your market in your 1004 NC, which does give you your market trends analysis. And that's how you're supposed to do it. That does not apply to every report. The ones that I just did in Flagstaff this last week had a sport court in the backyard, a very big home backing the freeway. And it's hard to find larger homes that have a negative external influence like backing the freeway. You know what I mean? It's a tough thing to find. So any data is not going to really track to the subject. So the market trends data is an overall softball poll of what's happening in the area, generally speaking. It does not specifically apply to the subject, because the subject property is going to have its own unique features, and it's going to be different than what the middle of that says. So I mean, again, I just did this $8 million one. My 1004 NC said that the highest closed sale available is 1.6 million, and I brought it in at 6.5, almost $7 million. So again, it's one of those things where the data is great, but really the data is showing what the buyer trend is like in the area. It's not necessarily specific to the subject property. So it's a hard question to answer, but it's you have to get a good pool of data, but it doesn't always match up with the subject.
Right. And not to forget that we have market data, which is those of us that enjoy the stats and the rational, the math, the science behind things. But just as important and more as we're seeing today in this market is really perceived value. It's the buyer. They're the ones that are creating, they always are depicting the value, but it's their perceived value at the end of the day. And you guys have the fun job of trying to put that somewhere into play, with the data and where the market trends and what the buyer's looking for. So it's a tough job. I wouldn't want it. And Mark Coletti, hopefully that answered it, but you also had a follow-up when you said, sorry, when he was talking about stats in other states. So if you want to unmute yourself, I'm not quite sure if he answered that for you or if you want to reiterate.
I'm sorry, Melinda. Earlier, when he was on a great rant about Utah, Montana, and Idaho, I got real interested, wondering where he was getting his data sources, how they're flattening out, and what they're
awesome.
That's
First of
what I
all,
was referring to.
Great question, man. So I'm certified in all of those states, and I will go and appraise if it takes an appraiser. If a lender gets a request for a tough one and they're an appraiser, either they all say no, or they say, sure, I'll have it done in 3 months or 2 months. That's beyond any closing. So they kind of use me as the utility guy. So I've been geographically competent in Montana, Idaho, Arizona, and mostly all of Arizona. I was just over in, oh man, what's the name of that town? Wilcox? I was just doing one over there that was really weird. But anyway, so I keep track of all those. I have like 8 different MLS accounts. I'm licensed in 9 different states. I don't always practice in those, but those states you just mentioned, I'm there quite frequently. I did appraisals here in Phoenix this week, but literally this weekend I was in Park City. I leave tomorrow to go back to Bozeman. Every time I used to talk to Melinda on our group call, I was in a hotel room, right? Melinda, I had my iPad up there because that's how it goes. And Bozeman is too expensive for me to live. I can't afford to buy a house there. But as a real quick question answer to those, all of those areas have one thing in common, and you cannot hide this factor. And it's my favorite meme of all time, which is Newsom is the greatest real estate agent to these different states for pushing people out. I know you've seen it, and you're not wrong. Most of those buyers left to go out of California, and they went to those states. And this is not like me making up. It takes a 2-second Google search, or just go look at my Instagram, because I put all of the maps on there, and I can show the areas that were growing the fastest. Those areas, and except for Utah, for some sections of Utah, it's still going strong. Salt Lake is good. Park City is good. The #1 city in the entire country that's on a watch list is Ogden, Utah. Most overpriced homes, and those houses are now being listed and selling for between 15 and 25% under list price. The hype factor is gone, and people are not willing to spend that top dollar out of pocket anymore. A lot of people did that last year, and they don't have the cash to do it anymore. So some of those areas where people left, either California or whatever reasons, and came over there, those states are now cooling. Bozeman is, I would say, my #1 area. And like I said, the demand just died. Now, it doesn't mean that the demand died. It means that the demand died at the current prices. I would love to buy a property in Bozeman. First of all, then I could stop sleeping in a hotel room when I'm over there all the time. But more importantly, it's a beautiful, beautiful place. Coeur d'Alene as well. I spent a lot of time over there. It's just overpriced. So the demand didn't necessarily drop off. It just dropped off because I'm not looking. I don't have the ability to afford a $550,000 condo in Bozeman or Coeur d'Alene. So when you say like, oh, the demand is gone, a lot of times the hype factor killed demand for some people because they're like, well, shit, now it's just so expensive, I can't even afford it. So it's not always the demand that you can track. Just like last year, the hype factor was something that you could see and feel, but you couldn't really show it. It's also the same way on the opposite side is, a lot of people see that my next door neighbor's house just listed at 550 grand. Well, I'm done. Either I have to sell it or I can't be a renter anymore. I can't afford to live here. So that's kind of what I'm using, but also really long answer to your short question is I have the data. I have all of those MLSs, and by every appraisal rule, I have to track those. So also lenders do ask me to do market polls for them. So
Great.
Thank you very much for that. That helped a
Sure,
ton
buddy.
in understanding where you're stating, the different flattenings and whatnot. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Oh, sure thing, buddy.
Great. And so far, we don't have any other questions, but we did have, and this is just some helpful feedback from us as realtors. And we do. I've got great relationships with our appraisers, so I don't want you to think that we're always against you. I think we're just trying to be on the same page and understand things. And it's a whole different science in what we do. And I'm so grateful that you talked about price per square footage, because it makes me cringe when people mention that, whether it's a client of mine or another agent that's using that as method. And it's just so outdated. It surprises me too that people start using that. And I think it might have come from commercial usage. People look at commercial totally different beast than residential. And so the best way to tell your clients is that it's never been applicable to residential sales. It's, if you're talking about commercial, then that might be the only place that's utilized, but we have to make that distinction as agents and understand that we don't use price per square footage. So thank you for touching on that.
I just have one thing for the remaining people in there. I know you're trying to wrap this up. If you guys, do you have any suggestions for appraisals? Because I have a million suggestions for agents, but we never really get it. We never really get it back. We get negative feedback, but nothing like, hey, you guys should do this. What do you have?
Well, for one, this is where I was kind of going. This is just some really good, helpful feedback. And I kind of took it on too far, but realtor has no I. So a lot of people pronounce realtor as realtor. And so a couple of us heard you say that. And so an anonymous attendee just wanted you to Realtor
An
has
anonymous,
high.
an anonymous attendee just grilled me. I love it. Wait, so wait a minute,
Not
hold on a second.
grilling you, it's just helpful feedback.
I know,
We want to know if you're doing something
I say-
wrong, you know.
Yeah, when I say grilling, I mean it in a jokey way. I don't take any of this personally. This is just a job. I'm not a bad guy. I'm just relaying. So I don't take any of this to heart. So wait a minute, repeat it again. What did I say and what is the right way of saying it?
A lot of people say it, even realtors. And so we've been on this whole
Realtors.
drive to let people know to pronounce realtor correctly. Think of it as real tour, real
Yeah.
tour.
What did I say? Realtor?
Realtor a few times. Like there's an I or an A somewhere.
Uh-huh, okay. All right. I
Between
got
the
you.
L
I
and the
got
T,
you.
it's just straight there, realtor, realtor.
Oh, there we go. Realtor. Yeah.
May not
Realtor.
be full
That's
O,
weird.
but yeah, just take the vowel out of between the L and the T,
Well
whatever vowel.
done. All right, I'll take that. That's a great one.
Yeah. So thank you for that.
I'm not saying
we
agent
hear it
wrong,
and our
right?
brain kind of twitches a little bit, and so somebody's brain was twitching there for you. So thank
I
you.
could just say agent though, right? An agent, everybody's okay with that.
Totally.
I realize there. Okay.
That'll work. But we are realtors
All
are
right.
to a higher standard, so we do like
Absolutely.
the name tag with that as well. But nonetheless, but that's a great question. What what can we do better as realtors? And so you had asked what what can we? How can we make that communication better? How can we all work together on that? So what do you see that would be helpful for you from realtors? And for those of you, as we're wrapping things up, if you have any suggestions for Stephen as well, put those in there, raise your hand and chat. We do want to kind of keep, Stephen's time, value his time. It's already 1:31, but if you've got any last minute questions or concerns, feel free to go ahead and address those. So Stephen, to you, what can we do better for appraisers?
It honestly, do better sounds kind of unfair because it makes it sound like somebody is not doing it right. But like I said, when I do my sort of interview with the initial contact person, whether it's the seller's agent, buyer's agent, whatever it is, the first thing I always ask for outside of setting up the appointment time is, do you have any comps you want me to consider up front? Typically when I call and set up an appointment, I haven't started the pre-research yet. And typical good agents will send me, here's the 10 that we use, here's the 3, or then you get the ones that go, why does it matter? And that's the one that gives me the chills because I notice that those typically are brokers. They don't really have a lot of their ducks in a row, but they will just say, oh, why does it matter? Don't you just pull the data on your own? I'm like, yeah, absolutely I do. And if you want to leave it all up to me, that's cool. But when I'm done, if you wished I would have taken this one down the street or this one instead, I didn't know. And the only reason I say that is because a lot of times you guys are freaking good. Well, that house down the street, it's sold, but that was an estate sale, or this one, don't use that one. That was a divorce. They were just really trying to get it turned over. Don't weigh on that. Those things don't come over in an MLS very well. So if you all know, like, avoid these ones, or no, don't use that comp. That was a half cash deal, some crazy nonsense. That is a really good tip to know up front. So it's either give us comps that we can use or point us in direction of ones that we don't. There's an agent down here that I like a lot that puts together a super fancy color appraisal packet with the comps put in there and everything like that. I know that's a little overboard, but just send us, if you have anything you want us to consider up front, a list of upgrades up front would be awesome. Before we get out there, we usually have, the good appraisers are 90% complete by the time we get out there because we know before we go. Very rarely do I get out there and I'm like, oh my God, this was nothing like what I thought. Where did that come from? It just doesn't happen. So, well, at least for what I consider good appraisers, but knowing as much before we get out there, it's faster for everybody. You guys get your files in faster from us. You can make your decisions quicker. So just give us information up front. Have it ready. That'd be great. And it doesn't have to be fancy like that agent in Phoenix that I like a lot. It can just be an MLS listing sheet that you email us. Here's the 10 that I liked. And I know it's easy to do that. You can flag them with the little check boxes and then save those into like a file like I do. And if I call and set it up and you're like, great, I already have them ready for you. Here's the comps that I used. That makes literally everybody's lives easier, especially ours.
And honestly, as a listing agent, we should have already done that homework before we even listed the property and arrived and discussed it with the seller. So you should have already had that work ready to go. And at the same time, having an upgrades list, I always recommend from sellers to put that, we attach that to the spuds. You should already have that as well too, the upgrades list. Let the buyers know. So that perceived value for the buyer goes up a little bit higher to kind of bump up the overall market value at the end. But then you've also got your appraisers all ready to go. So just a little tip there that I think will help not only the appraisal process, I'm glad you mentioned that, but also just the overall quality of the listing we're putting out there. So great. Okay. Well, I don't have anything else other than recommend to everybody, be nice to your appraisers. They are. We might not always agree with how they arrive at value or what the value ends up being, but we are in this working together. And the more that we communicate and get a better understanding of things, the better it's going to be. And we work for our clients. And so we're supposed to be working together with everybody that's involved so that's a smooth situation for our clients. So I just wanted to kind of reiterate that. And with that, we're at 1:35. So Stephen, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us today. Great.
Thank you.
Great explanation and presentation for us today. And we'll go ahead and let you take off. And just as a reminder, we're trying to redo the title, the lending, the appraisal process every 3 to 6 months so people can see those trends and kind of be reminded about things that we should be at. So we'd love to have you back. So expect that call to you. And with that, don't forget, we've got our Lunch and Learn series continuing to go forward just about every Tuesday. So check online. I believe they're also on our MLS broadcast messages. You can register right there and join us every Tuesday, 12 to 1:30. So thanks again, everybody, for being here. Have a wonderful rest of the day, rest of the week. Hope you stay dry. And for those of you that are in the flood zone, please get the hell out. And if you need any help, don't hesitate to reach out to your realtor community for anything that we may be able to do. So thanks again, everybody, for taking the time to better your business and your profession. And if there's anything you would like us to bring to you to help you do that, don't hesitate to reach out to me, Melinda Morfin, or at the association so that we can put that into consideration and action. So with that, have a great day, and we'll go ahead and let you guys get on with the rest of yours. So again, thanks, Stephen. Take care, and we'll see you next time.